2, a witness reported that Allen was dressed as a woman and acting erratically. Research shows that investigators believe there was a specific reason Allen chose the movie Trainwreck as the site of his shooting spree. Perhaps because of its feminist themes and characters, or perhaps because the main character is Jewish, for Allen was known to be both anti-Semitic and anti-woman. Allen passed a federal background check in February 2014 when he purchased the handgun used in the shooting. He had several brushes with the authorities before. Still, none of his previous charges rose to the level of prohibiting Allen from purchasing a weapon, at least not according to Alabama law, which is where he bought the gun. The Money Miser pawn shop in Phoenix City, Alabama, is the exact location that sold the firearm to Allen. His motel room was searched, and it was determined that Allen had been staying there for approximately 3 weeks leading up to the shooting. In the room, police located a journal that consisted of 39 pages and included random notes, such as the name of the theater and time and date of the screening of Trainwreck. What was not found in the journal was an apparent reason or motive for this truly appalling act of malice. Like many other shooters we have covered, Allen expressed hatred towards women, people of different faiths, and gay men. There were very random thoughts on various topics, such as the 10 Commandments, politics, news, the 2016 presidential race, music, and movies. His journal entries included statements calling America a filth farm, and on the last page, he wrote that he was writing the journal, quote, "In hopes of truth, my death, all but assured." And underneath that statement, he wrote the word Trainwreck. It was also later discovered that Allen's blood alcohol level was 0.1, making him legally drunk at the time of the shooting. The first victim to be shot and killed was Jillian Johnson. Jillian was born on March 4th, 1982 in Lafayette, Louisiana, and her family roots are deeply planted in Cajun country. Despite this, Jillian moved with her immediate family to Nashville, Tennessee from 1988 until 2002. She moved back to Louisiana for college, where she attended the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in fine arts in ceramics. Jillian was incredibly creative and artistic. She was very independent with a strong mind for business, becoming the manager and booking agent for a band called the Red Stick Ramblers, which is a Cajun and Western swing band. This job sparked her passion for the Lafayette music scene, and it wasn't long before Jillian was managing other bands and even designing their CDs, posters, and other merchandise. In 2009, the love of her life moved next door, and they soon became inseparable, marrying in 2013. The couple opened their own business, a little shop called Red Arrow Workshop, which sold wooden toys, jewelry, and candles. She absolutely adored her stepdaughter, Paxton, and was a fur mommy to 2 poodles named Vega and Knives. A true lover of all things music, Jillian played in her own band called the Figs. Her favorite movie was Coal Miner's Daughter, and she even helped organize a music festival. In 2011, her friend Tyler Thigpen helped her start a non-profit focusing on local food. Jillian leaves behind parents Jackie and Sally Johnson, and her brother Bram Johnson.
She had so much potential. She had miles to go before she slept, and she slept way too soon. We didn't get to see her full potential.
21-year-old Macey Barreau was born to parents Kevin and Dondi Barreau on September 23, 1993. Born in Franklin, Louisiana, she was raised there with her siblings, brother Dustin and sister Allie. Macey graduated from Hanson Memorial High School in 2012, and then attended the Louisiana State University, Eunice, where she was studying to be an ultrasound and radiology technician. Classmates and teachers said she was sweet and generous, always polite and professional. She started dance classes at a very young age and was happiest when she was dancing. However, her greatest passion was her family. Macey was still dating her high school sweetheart when she was senselessly murdered. The young couple had big plans of getting married and starting a family. Macey and her boyfriend were together at the movies on that fateful night. He was shot in the chest, but wasn't critically injured. Despite no physical injuries, the loss the young man suffered in the blink of an eye is utterly heartbreaking. Macey was working her way through college and had a job at a local boutique. Her mom was her best friend, and her dad still struggles with his immeasurable loss. How could he not? This is not the kind of loss any person can prepare for. Certainly not a parent. Their girl Macey loved them so much, and even came home to visit from college every weekend.
There's nothing we can do to bring her back. The theater was huge, but it's my niece that got in the way of that bullet.
What led him in life to come to this, to take my niece? I forgive him for what he did, but he will be judged.
Morgan Edgdahl was at the movies with her best friend, Jillian Johnson. Morgan's loss and suffering cannot be described in words. Our words could never do her justice. You see, Morgan didn't just lose her best friend, although that, in and of itself, is unfathomable. Morgan was shot too, and was the last of the shooting victims to be discharged from the hospital at Our Lady of Lourdes Regional Medical Center. She was hospitalized until August 14th, healed on the outside, but was suffering tremendously on the inside. She still struggles with severe PTSD and flashbacks. Sometimes, Morgan hears phantom gunshots and sees things at night, or things from being in the hospital. She lives with that single day, those couple of minutes, every second of her life, tolerating nerve pain, anxiety, and depression. Morgan has endured years of therapy, both emotional and physical. She goes through cycles of being able to function and live everyday life, including taking care of her children for weeks and sometimes months. But then the flashbacks start back up, leading her down the hole of anxiety, depression, and PTSD all over again. Sometimes panic attacks get so bad she can barely get out of bed, let alone leave the house. Morgan and Jillian met when they were only 9 years old, and were both living in Nashville, Tennessee. Jillian convinced Morgan to move to Lafayette in 2005, and the best friends loved hanging out whenever they had the chance. The two were meeting for dinner that night to catch up, and they were going to continue chatting at the restaurant, but at the last minute, they decided to go to the movie, arriving almost 10 minutes late. They were barely in the theater for 10 minutes when gunshots started. Like so many others that night, the women initially thought the gunshots were firecrackers, or fireworks. In fact, Morgan recalled being annoyed that kids were goofing off during the movie, until a bullet hit her, and she fell to the floor. As she hit the ground, Morgan looked over and saw her best friend lying on the ground next to her. At the same time, she glanced up, and to her horror, she saw Alan standing over her, with the gun pointed directly in her face. Instinctively, Morgan threw her arms up, trying to protect herself, but it was too late, for at that precise moment, Alan shot her again. She turned over, trying to crawl away, but he kept shooting at her. After Alan had walked outside the building and immediately re-entered, he approached Morgan once more, shooting her one final time. The last shot struck her in the neck, which broke her back. One movie theater manager most likely saved Morgan's life by applying pressure to her wounds until emergency personnel arrived. Appallingly, Morgan never lost consciousness. She heard and saw everything, which is simply more than any human should ever have to endure. Morgan can even recall being hauled out in a stretcher outside to an ambulance, and as she was being loaded into the van, she looked over and saw Jill on a stretcher with an officer giving her CPR. It is entirely unimaginable the fear, the pain and the fear Morgan must have felt. There are no words, and our hearts break thinking of all she has suffered. Yet, her story didn't just end when she arrived at the hospital. No. Morgan was conscious and aware of the ride to the hospital, and as she arrived, she desperately tried to hold on to any hand that reached out for her, begging for her life, begging doctors and nurses not to let her die. Morgan was shot 7 times, including in the neck, the left arm, both legs, with one severing her right femur, through her chest, which punctured a lung, and 3 times in the torso, injuring a lung, liver, spleen, colon, and kidney. She ended up leaving the job she loved so much at Red's Health Club because it was just a few doors down from the theater, and she couldn't bear driving past the theater every day, twice a day, while commuting to her job. She ended up moving to Baton Rouge and rarely visits Lafayette anymore. Everything reminds her of Jillian, the massacre she had to overcome surviving, and the unspeakable losses she has sustained. After about 4 years of being in and out of various mental health treatment centers, Morgan decided to enter an intensive 8-week treatment program. Hopefully, she can find some measure of peace in her life. No one deserves it more. The additional victims included 2 teachers from Jeanerette Senior High School who were labeled as heroes. Allie Martin and Jenna Moe were both shot and wounded. One of the teachers threw herself on the other, acting as a human shield. Allie pulled the fire alarm at the theater, which was one saving grace, and helped so many countless people escape to safety. Both teachers had taken crisis training at the school where they taught. They knew exactly what to do. Even though they weren't in a school setting, they reacted exactly as they should have. There was an Afghanistan war veteran named Sean Duke in the crowd, and he immediately jumped in and started helping one of the teachers. Sean later remarked that the teacher remained calm and didn't panic, saying that even after seeing people receive the same types of combat injuries, he was impressed with how she handled her injuries. Sean wasn't sure which teacher it was that helped, but their heroism and quick thinking clearly stuck with him. Listeners, we aren't here to debate gun control or politics. Our intent is to bring you the facts, honor the victims, and try to discuss what went wrong and whether the event could have been prevented. But this is a moment to highlight the preparedness and actions that have been taken in response to mass shootings across the country. It would be a perfect world where such measures are unnecessary, but this world is far from perfect. Having protocols in place, including active shooter training and creating emergency response plans, is so valuable. Every single life saved as a result makes it worth the cost of added funding for schools, banks, malls, hotels, and other vulnerable places to have thorough active shooter training and retraining. Lafayette, Louisiana is the parish seat of Lafayette Parish, Louisiana. Parishes are the equivalent to a county in all states besides Louisiana. Lafayette is the 4th largest city in the state, with an estimated population of 126,000 people as of 2019. The city, nicknamed the Hub City, was founded in 1821 and was initially called Vermilionville, but was later renamed Lafayette in 1884. The city motto is, quote, the heart of Cajun country, and is home to a large Roman Catholic population. Lafayette receives on average about 57 inches of rain annually, and residents can typically expect a scorching and humid climate, with hot, humid summers and warm, damp winters. The Lafayette Parish school system consists of 45 total schools, including 8 high schools, 12 middle schools, 25 elementary schools, one community college, one university,